There is a specific kind of pain that has no name. It is not heartbreak. Heartbreak is something the world understands. Songs are written about it. Friends know what to say. It fits inside a category that people recognize. What I am talking about is something different. It is the pain of being betrayed by someone who was supposed to be the one person in the world who would never do it. Someone who sat beside your hospital bed and held your hand and looked at you with soft eyes while quietly, carefully, systematically taking everything you had ever worked for. It does not have a name because most people cannot imagine it, and the ones who can. They are usually sitting exactly where I was sitting 3 years ago, staring at a screen, reading words that rearrange the entire history of a relationship they thought they understood. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I am 34 years old. I am the founder and CEO of Origin & Company, a luxury interior design and home decor firm based in New York City. We have worked with some of the most respected real estate developers on the East Coast. Our portfolio has been featured in 3 major design publications. Last year, we were named one of the top emerging design firms in the country. And every single thing I just told you, every client, every feature, every square foot of success, was built on the foundation of a betrayal so clean and so quiet that most people who heard the story at first did not believe me. Welcome to Betravex. Grab something warm to drink. Get somewhere comfortable. Because this story takes 3 years to tell, and I am going to tell you all of it. If someone has ever taken something from you, an idea, an opportunity, a dream you shared in a moment of trust, drop a comment below. I want to hear from you, and please subscribe to this channel, because you are going to want to know how this ends. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. Middle-class family. My father worked in logistics. My mother was a school administrator. We were not wealthy, but we were stable, and in our house stability was treated as something close to sacred. I have one sibling, a sister named Lisa. Lisa is 2 years older than me, and for most of my life, she was my closest friend. Not just in the way that sisters are supposed to be close. I mean genuinely, truly, in the way that you choose a person. If something happened to me, I called Lisa first. If I was scared, I called Lisa. If I had news, good or bad, Lisa was the first voice I wanted to hear on the other end of the phone. I trusted her the way you trust your own heartbeat, without thinking about it, without questioning it. It was simply a fact of my life. I had worked a corporate job since graduating from college. Project coordinator at a mid-sized commercial real estate company in Atlanta. The work was steady, the salary was decent, and I was very good at it. But I was not passionate about it. I was passionate about something else entirely. Since I was a teenager, I had been obsessed with spaces. The way a room feels when the light hits it correctly. The way furniture placement changes the entire emotional experience of walking into a place. The way color and texture and proportion can make a space feel alive or dead. I filled notebooks with sketches. I rearranged my bedroom furniture constantly. I spent hours on weekends walking through furniture stores and open houses and design showrooms, not to buy anything, just to feel the rooms. I knew from the time I was about 22 that I wanted to build a business in interior design and home decor, not a freelance operation. A proper firm, something with a brand, a portfolio, a team, a vision. I spent 2 full years planning it. 2 years of research, of market analysis, of competitor study, of financial projections. I identified a gap in the Atlanta market. There were plenty of budget decorators and plenty of ultra-luxury firms, but almost nothing serving the growing mid to upper market of young professionals and new homeowners who wanted elevated design without the intimidating price point of a full luxury firm. I developed the entire concept. The name was Nest & Company. Clean, warm, approachable but sophisticated. I designed a preliminary logo. I built a supplier contact list. Over 60 vendors, manufacturers, and wholesalers that I had spent months identifying and vetting. I wrote a full business plan with financial projections for the first 3 years, a marketing strategy, a service menu, a pricing structure, and a client acquisition approach. I had $28,000 saved. It was enough to launch modestly. And through all of it, every late night, every weekend of research, every version of the business plan, I shared everything with Lisa. She was the person I called when I had a new idea. She was the one who sat with me at my kitchen table on Sunday afternoons while I sketched logos and talked through pricing models. She asked questions. Good questions. She seemed genuinely excited. She asked me about the suppliers, about the client acquisition strategy, about the financial projections. She told me she believed in me. She said, more than once, "Sarah, this is going to be incredible. You were made for this." I believed her. Why would I not? She was my sister. I gave her a copy of my full business plan because I wanted her feedback. I walked her through the supplier list. I showed her my sketches, my brand concepts, my market research. I shared all of it openly, generously, without a single hesitation. That was my mistake. Not because sharing is wrong, but because I shared with someone I had not properly seen yet. In March of that year, I got sick. It started as what I thought was a stomach ache. By the second day, it was worse. By the third day, I was in an emergency room. My appendix had ruptured. The infection had spread. What should have been a straightforward appendectomy became a complicated surgery followed by 3 weeks of hospitalization and a recovery that the doctors described as more difficult than expected. I was genuinely scared. Not dramatically, not for effect. I mean the quiet, private fear of someone lying in a hospital bed at night, alone with the sounds of the machines, wondering what happens if the next test result comes back wrong. Lisa came every day. She sat in the chair beside my bed. She brought me things from home. She held my hand when the pain was bad. She talked to me about everything and nothing. Family news, small stories, the kind of conversation you have with someone when you are both pretending the situation is more ordinary than it is. I was so grateful for her. I remember lying there thinking, whatever happens in life, at least I have my sister. On the second week, she asked me something. She said she was worried about my laptop, which I had left at home, and that there were some documents on it she thought I might need access to. She asked for my password, just to check, just to make sure nothing important was sitting there needing attention. I gave it to her without a second thought. I was lying in a hospital bed with a drain in my side and an IV in my arm. I was not thinking about business plans. I was not thinking about anything except getting well. I gave her my password. I trusted her with everything I was, and she sat there beside me and smiled and said she would take care of it. I recovered. I came home after 3 weeks, thinner and tired but grateful to be out of that hospital room. I told myself I would rest for a month and then start moving forward with Nest and company. I had lost time, but time was recoverable. Everything was still there. The plan, the savings, the idea. Everything was still there. I believed that completely. It was a Thursday evening in May, about 6 weeks after I came home from the hospital. I was on my phone, still in my recovery routine. Limited activity, early nights, gentle walks. A mutual friend of Lisa's and mine, a woman named Dana, sent me a message. It said, "Hey, random question. Did you and Lisa decide to start the business together? I just saw something online that looks exactly like what you described to me last year." She included a link. I clicked it. The website was clean, professional, well-designed. An interior design and home decor firm targeting young professionals and new homeowners in the Atlanta market. Approachable luxury positioning. A service menu that was almost identical to the one I had built. A pricing structure that matched mine almost exactly. A list of supplier partnerships. And I recognized more than half of the names because they were on the list I had personally compiled over 18 months of research. The business was called Casa & Company. The founder and owner was listed as Lisa Mitchell, my sister. I sat on my couch and I read the entire website 3 times. I looked at the logo, a simple, elegant word mark with a small geometric mark beside it. Different enough from my sketches to be legally distinct. Similar enough that I felt it in my chest. She had already signed 2 clients. There were testimonials on the site. The business had been operating, quietly, soft-launched, for at least 4 weeks, according to the publication dates on 2 early press mentions I found when I searched the name. She had launched while I was still in the hospital. She had taken my laptop password, accessed my files, taken everything I had built, and launched it before I was even well enough to walk to the end of my street. I called her. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was calm, almost casual. I said, "Lisa, what is Casa & Company?" A pause. Then, "It's my business. I've been working on it." I said, "It's my business. The concept, the pricing, the suppliers, the market positioning, all of it is mine. You know that," she said, "and I will remember this for the rest of my life." She said, "Sarah, it was just an idea. You were in the hospital. I didn't know if you were ever going to actually do it. Someone had to." I said, "I gave you my laptop password to check my emails." She said, "You left everything open. What was I supposed to do? Ignore it?" And then she said something that I think she believed was a kindness. She said, "You should actually be thanking me. I proved the concept works. You can still do something similar." I hung up the phone. I called my mother. I told her everything. The website, the suppliers, the timeline, all of it. My mother listened. And then she said, carefully, gently, in the way that mothers say things that they know will hurt, "Sarah, Lisa has already launched. She has clients. What do you want her to do? Shut it down? That doesn't make any sense. You should both just move forward. Move forward." As if my forward and my sister's forward were the same direction. I called 2 other family members. Same response. Variations of the same theme. It was already done. I should let it go. Maybe I could work with Lisa instead of against her. Did I really want to make this into a family conflict? Nobody said what she did was wrong. Nobody said your idea was yours. Nobody said you were in a hospital bed. I was completely alone in the understanding of what had happened to me. The months that followed were the hardest of my life. Not because of the betrayal alone, though that was enough, but because of the silence around it. The way everyone I told either didn't believe me fully or didn't think it mattered enough to say so clearly. I quit my corporate job. Not strategically. Impulsively. Out of a despair I was not managing well. I told myself I needed space to figure out what to do next. What I actually did was spend 2 months barely leaving my apartment. I was still physically recovering from the surgery. I was emotionally destroyed by what my sister had done and by the response of my family. I was financially anxious. My savings were still intact, but without income, they would not last forever. And I was facing the particular cruelty of watching, through social media, as Lisa's business grew. New client announcements. New project features. A profile piece in a local Atlanta design blog. She was living my dream. In public. With my name nowhere near it. There were nights I opened my laptop to start rebuilding the business plan and simply could not do it. The idea that had felt so alive and so mine for 2 years now felt contaminated. Lisa had touched it. Her hands were on it. Every time I looked at the concept I had built, I saw her face. I thought seriously about abandoning it entirely. Starting over with something completely different. Anything that did not have her fingerprints on it. I came very close. The lowest night was a Tuesday in August. I had been sitting at my kitchen table for 2 hours, not working, not eating, just sitting. My original business notebook was on the table in front of me. The one I had kept since the beginning, the one with every sketch, every idea, every supplier name, every version of the logo I had tried, every projection I had calculated by hand. I had not opened it in months. That night, for no reason I can fully explain, I opened it. The first page had a date, 2.5 years before the hospital, before Lisa, before any of it. I flipped through slowly, page after page of my own handwriting, my own sketches, my own ideas, in my own words, dated in my own hand, built entirely from my own mind over 2 years of work. Nobody could take this. Not really. The notebook was mine. The original thought was mine. The months of research were mine. The idea had come from inside me, from the part of me that had been sketching room layouts since I was a teenager, that had always seen the world in terms of light and proportion and the way a space makes a person feel. Lisa had taken files. She had taken a business plan. She had taken a supplier list. She had not taken the source. The source was still here. And sitting at that kitchen table at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night, I felt something shift. Not dramatically. Not like a movie moment. More like a very quiet internal decision that settled into place without fanfare. I was not going to abandon this dream. I was not going to let Lisa live it while I watched. But I was also not going to rush. I was not going to make noise. I was not going to confront anyone or post anything on social media or make a single phone call to a single family member. I was going to build. Silently. Patiently. And I was going to build something so far beyond what Lisa had made from my idea that the distance between her version and mine would be the clearest possible statement of what she had taken and what I was actually capable of. I opened a new page in the notebook and I wrote 3 words at the top. Bigger. Better. Undeniable. Then I started planning. The first decision was geography. I was not going to compete with Lisa in Atlanta. Not because I was afraid of the competition, but because building in the same market, at the same level, would read as imitation, even though the original was mine. I did not want to be in her shadow in any way, in any city, at any level. I was going to New York. I packed what I needed, sublet my Atlanta apartment, and moved to New York City with $24,000 in savings and a notebook full of plans. The first thing I did was get a job. Not in a corporate office, inside the industry. I applied to interior design firms until I found one willing to hire me as a junior project coordinator. The pay was modest. The hours were long. The work was humbling for someone who had spent 2 years planning to run her own operation. But I understood what I was doing. I was not just earning a salary. I was going to school. I was learning the industry from the inside, how high-end firms operated, how they acquired clients, how they managed projects, how they built reputations. I stayed at that firm for 18 months. I was promoted once. I learned everything I could from every person around me. I studied the suppliers they used, premium vendors that operated at a level I had not yet had access to in Atlanta. I built relationships carefully, professionally, without agenda. At night and on weekends, I worked on Origin and Company. The name came to me in the 2nd month in New York. Origin. Because everything I was building went back to an original idea, mine. Because the word carried the concept of source, of beginning, of authenticity. And because it was the quiet answer to everything Lisa had taken. You can copy a business plan, but you cannot copy an origin. I redesigned everything from scratch. Not because I had to. Legally, my original materials were mine and always had been, but because I wanted what I built to be completely, obviously, undeniably superior to what Lisa had made from them. I wanted no question in anyone's mind about which version was the real one. I repositioned the concept upmarket. Lisa's Casa and Company operated in the mid-range. I was going to build a premium firm. Better suppliers, higher-end clientele, a portfolio that spoke for itself before I said a single word in a pitch meeting. I took additional courses: business management, luxury brand marketing, client relations at the high-end level. I read everything I could find about building a premium service brand. I studied the firms I admired and the ones I did not, and I learned something from both categories. I saved aggressively. I lived in a small apartment with one roommate. I did not go out. I did not spend money on anything that was not rent, food, education, or the slow and careful building of Origin and Company. This was not deprivation. This was investment. I understood exactly what I was doing and why. In the second year, I began building my portfolio quietly. Pro bono projects for people I knew. A friend's apartment, a small restaurant space, a startup office. Each project was photographed professionally. Each one went into the portfolio I was assembling for Origin and Company, and in that second year, I found Harmon Group. Harmon Group was a luxury real estate developer operating out of New York with projects in Atlanta, Charlotte, and Miami. They developed high-end residential properties and commercial spaces. They were exactly the kind of client that a firm like Origin and Company premium positioning, serious portfolio, elevated supplier relationships was built for. I also discovered something interesting through industry contacts. Harmon Group had a relationship with an interior design firm for their Atlanta properties. That firm was Casa and Company. Lisa had landed Harmon Group. It was her biggest client. I could see that from the way she featured the relationship on her website. Harmon Group projects were the centerpiece of her portfolio. I spent 6 months studying that relationship. Not obsessively. Professionally. I paid attention to the work Lisa was producing for Harmon Group, to the clients' public statements about their properties, to the reviews and press coverage of the finished spaces. I paid attention to what was being praised and, more importantly, to what was being quietly not mentioned. What I found was a pattern. Harmon Group was a sophisticated developer with an elevated vision for their properties. Lisa's work was competent. It was decent. But it was mid-range execution for a client that was beginning to want something more. The gap between what Harmon Group was becoming and what Casa and Company was delivering was slowly widening. I noted everything. I said nothing. I kept building. In the third year, I left the design firm and worked full-time on Origin and Company. I incorporated the business, finalized the brand, launched the website, and began client outreach. The portfolio spoke for itself. Within the first 3 months, I had signed 2 clients, a boutique hotel renovation in Brooklyn and a residential project in Manhattan's Upper West Side. The hotel project, when it was completed and photographed, was featured in a regional design publication. The feature described Origin and Company as a new firm with an unusually mature aesthetic and a striking clarity of vision. I framed that quote, not for vanity, as a reminder of what 3 years of quiet, disciplined work produces. Origin and Company was real. It was mine. And it was ready. By the time I was preparing to approach Harmon Group, I was a different person from the woman who had sat at a kitchen table in Atlanta staring at a notebook. Not different in the way that people mean when they say someone has changed, as if the original person was somehow wrong and needed replacing. Different in the way that someone becomes more fully themselves when they stop waiting for circumstances to be kind and start building regardless. I was confident. Not the performed confidence of someone who needs people to believe them, the quiet confidence of someone who has done the work and knows what it produced. I wore it the way I wore my suits, cleanly, without drawing attention to it, because it did not need announcing. Lisa had heard about Origin and Company. I knew that because a mutual contact mentioned that Lisa had asked about the firm, about who was running it. The contact, who did not know the full history between us, had simply said it was a New York firm doing strong work. Lisa did not yet know it was me. That was fine. She was going to find out, but not before I was ready. I contacted Harmon Group through a formal business introduction, a letter and a portfolio package sent to their head of development, a man named Robert Harmon. Clean, professional, specific. I did not make it about Lisa. I made it entirely about them, what I understood about their vision, what I had observed about their properties, what I believed Origin and Company could bring to their future projects. 3 days later, Robert Harmon's office called to schedule a meeting. I flew to New York for the meeting. They had offices there as well as Atlanta, and I presented for 40 minutes. I showed them the portfolio. I talked about the supplier relationships I had built. I talked about the specific direction I believed their brand was moving and how Origin and company was positioned to move with it. I answered every question they had with precision and without hesitation. At the end of the meeting, Robert Harmon looked at his team and then back at me and said, "Miss Mitchell, we've been looking for something like this for about a year. We just weren't sure we'd find it." I said, "I've been building it for 3." They signed with Origin and company the following week. It was a Friday afternoon when I got the confirmation email. I was in my New York apartment. I read it twice. Then I sat quietly for a few minutes. Then I called Lisa. She answered on the 3rd ring. I had not spoken to her in 2.5 years. I said, "Lisa, it's Sarah. I wanted to let you know personally. Origin and company just signed Harmon Group." Silence. Then, "What is Origin and company?" I said, "My company. I've been building it for 3 years. In New York. It launches formally this month." More silence. Then her voice changed. The composure cracked slightly at the edges, and I could hear the recognition moving through her. Who I was, what I had done, what this meant. She said, "You did this on purpose." I said, "I built a business. The same business I planned while you were asking me questions at my kitchen table. The same business you took while I was in a hospital bed. Except I built it the way I always intended to, without cutting any corners." She said, "Sarah, Harmon Group is my biggest client. Do you understand what you just did?" I said, "I understand exactly what I did. You told me once that it was just an idea and I should be thanking you for proving the concept works. You were right about one thing. The concept works. Turns out it works even better when it's built properly." She started to say something else. I said, "I hope Casa and company does well, Lisa. I genuinely do. But I'm going to go run my company now." I ended the call. I sat back in my chair and looked at the ceiling of my apartment for a long moment. It did not feel the way I had imagined it would feel in the early days of the plan. In the moments when I had been honest with myself about the fact that some part of what I was building was built in the direction of this phone call, it did not feel triumphant or electric or satisfying in a sharp way. It felt quiet. It felt settled. It felt, more than anything else, like completion. Like something that had been open for 3 years had finally, cleanly, closed. My mother called 2 days later. Word had moved through the family, as it always does. She said, "Sarah, I owe you an apology." I told her I was not interested in relitigating what had happened. What I was interested in was moving forward, and I had been doing that for 3 years. I told her I loved her, and that our relationship was intact. But I also told her clearly and calmly that what Lisa had done was wrong, that it had always been wrong, and that the silence of our family and the aftermath of it had hurt me in a way that the theft alone had not. She listened. She did not argue. She said she understood. That was enough. I spoke to Dana, the friend who had sent me the original link, whose message had started everything. I told her the full story. She cried. I did not, which surprised me a little. I think I had already processed most of what needed processing over 3 years of early mornings and late nights, and every choice I had made in the service of something larger than the hurt. I thought often in those weeks after the Harmon Group signing about the version of me who had been in that hospital room. Scared, medicated, grateful for the sister who sat beside her every day and held her hand. That woman had been naive, but she had not been wrong to love her sister. She had not been wrong to trust. She had not been wrong to share her dream openly and generously with someone she believed in. She was just wrong about who that person was. What I know now that I did not know then is this. The idea was never the most valuable thing I had. It was never the business plan or the supplier list or the logo sketches or the market research. Those things are tools. They can be copied, stolen, recreated, improved upon, or destroyed and rebuilt. The most valuable thing I had was the mind that produced them, the vision, the discipline, the willingness to begin again at the lowest possible point in a new city, alone, with nothing but a notebook and a decision. That could not be accessed with a laptop password. That was mine and only mine. Always. Origin and Company is now in its 2nd full year of operation. We have worked with 6 major clients. We have a team of 4 full-time staff and a network of trusted collaborators. We have been featured in 3 design publications. Harmon Group has become a long-term partner, and we are currently in the design phase of 2 of their newest developments. I am proud of what we have built. Not in a loud way. In the quiet, deep way that comes from knowing exactly what it cost. Lisa and I do not have a relationship right now. That may change with time. I am not carrying anger about it. Anger is expensive, and I have better things to spend my energy on. What I carry instead is clarity. A clear understanding of who I am, what I am capable of, and what happens when someone mistakes my trust for weakness. They find out, eventually, that those are not the same thing. To anyone watching this who has had something taken from them, an idea, an opportunity, a dream you made the mistake of sharing with the wrong person, I want you to hear something clearly. They did not take your ability to create it. Whatever they stole a version of it, a copy, a moment in time. They did not take the source. They do not have access to the part of you that conceived it in the first place, that saw it whole before it existed, that believed in it enough to write it down and plan it out and imagine it into something real. That part of you is still there. It was there before the betrayal, and it is there now, and it will keep producing ideas and visions and plans long after the person who hurt you has forgotten your name. The idea is not the valuable thing. You are the valuable thing. Go build. Build quietly. Build patiently. Build in the direction of your own vision, not in the direction of their awareness. Do not perform your comeback. Do not announce your progress. Do not give anyone the satisfaction of watching you rebuild in real time. Just build. And one day you will be on a phone call, or in a meeting, or standing somewhere that was never supposed to be yours, and it will feel like exactly where you were always going. Because it is. Because the betrayal was not a detour. It was the road itself, and you walked every mile of it, and you are here. Thank you for watching Betravex. If this story reached you, if any part of it felt like something you needed to hear today, please share it. Someone in your life is sitting in their own version of that Atlanta apartment right now, and they need to know that the ending is not written yet. Subscribe to this channel. We tell true stories of strength and betrayal and the patient, unglamorous, deeply satisfying work of building your own life on your own terms. Drop a comment and tell me, what is the dream you have not given up on? I read every single one. Until next time, build quietly, build completely, build like you have nothing to prove, because you don't. The work will say it for you. Sarah Mitchell.